So, how to buy property in a Japanese ski town. That's what we're going to be breaking down in today's video. The steps that will make your life easier if you're looking at buying property in a Japanese ski town and running it as a business. There's a lot of different tax implications around this, and also visa requirements and all different things, which we're going to go over in this video. Try and make it a little bit easier for a lot of people. They're coming into the space. So, first things first, being on the ground is pretty crucial, especially on those early parts when you're looking at buying a property or buying a lodge or an Airbnb, whatever it may be. Being on the ground is going to make your life a lot easier. A lot of people try and do this via email and via websites and all these different things, which is quite tricky, especially if you're looking a bit more off the beaten path, like Myoko and Madarao and Tangram, maybe all these sort of different sort of resorts around that sort of region, or even some in Nagano. You know, you don't have the infrastructure and the people in place to manage this from afar. Maybe if Niseko and Hakuba, yes, you could probably look at potentially doing a lot of this without being in the country, but for me personally, I think being on the ground is going to make your life so much easier, especially when it comes to even just looking at properties. People can do it on your behalf, but I don't know, I think it's better to be there in person, especially for the first month or two, just to try and get a lay of the land, try and understand the market itself, go look at properties, go talk to accountants, go talk to immigration lawyers, talk about structuring, how you're going to structure it all. Definitely being on the ground helps a lot in this regard. I mean, you can do a bit of research and things, definitely get a bit of a heads up before you get out there, but once you make that call, I want to do this, head over there, maybe have a few properties lined up that you want to go see. Being on the ground is pretty crucial. And also a lot of this is interconnected, okay, depending on which license you want to get for the property, depends on the size of the property. So yeah, being on the ground is definitely going to help with a lot of this in the early days, just trying to get everything set up and established. And you can't really do this in the winter season as well. A lot of this happens in the green season, so don't try and expect to plan a ski holiday and then, you know, try and buy a house while you're there. A lot of the agents might not even show you through the property during the winter months. A lot of snow and all these things. A lot of the properties may be abandoned, so they might be just buried and can't even get to them. So best sort of time to do this is sort of in the spring, like maybe late season, come out in March or April. Even May, there's a good time of the year to be there, or even later into the season, into the green season, more sort of September, October, November, and they're sort of coming into winter as well. Those are both sort of good times to get on the ground, start looking at properties if you're wanting to get out there. Okay, so let's say you found a property. What's the next step in the process would be, obviously you've got to buy the property. It's fairly straightforward if you're a cash buyer or you're withdrawing equity from your property back home, but trying to get finance within Japan, pretty much write that off. So that's one thing. So let's say you've bought the property, you paid for it, everything's settled in that regard. Now you want to probably start looking at getting licensing on that property. Now, depending on the size of the property, the easiest license to get would be the Minpaku license. There are a few limitations around this, but this is perfect for, let's say, a small Airbnb 4 or 5 bedroom house, or even 2, 3, 4, 5 bedroom house. This would probably be most suitable for a Minpaku license, which is fairly straightforward. Look, I'd talk to someone else that is a specialist in this. You can go navigate this yourself, but it's going to make your life so much easier if you get someone to help you out. It may cost you anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000, maybe even $5,000, let's say Australian, to help you get that license. But if you're trying to navigate this on your own, allow 6 months, no, maybe not quite 6 months, but allow like 3 months of absolute pain to try and get it over the line. So much easier to get someone to help you out with that sort of part of the process. Now, the main limitations around the Minpaku are it's 180 days per year limit that you're allowed to rent that out, which at this stage, you're probably not going to be renting it out for over 180 days anyway, unless you're more buying something in the cities. But this video, we're more talking about Airbnb through the ski towns, which is predominantly for winter. So you're looking at 3 or 4 months, absolute max, that you're going to rent it out on a yearly basis. So Minpaku should be all right for you in that regard. But there are some restrictions around that. You must be close to your Minpaku or close to your Airbnb, or even living on site. There are a few ways to get around this, but that's another little thing you've got to factor in as well. Legally, you're meant to be living on site or living in one of the rooms and sort of managing it from there, or being within a 2, 3 minute, 5 minute walk of the property as well. So that's something else you've got to factor into it as well. There's often rules and regulations around Minpaku as well, depending on the village that you may be buying into, depending on the zoning of that village as well. There's different sort of green areas or these sort of zones where they don't actually allow you to run a Minpaku from that sort of property, because initially when they established these sort of zones, there was no such thing as Minpakus or Airbnbs. So those rules are changing around this, but that's another thing you've got to factor in as well. Can I legally even operate my Airbnb within this area? There's a couple of spots in around our region where we are, in like sort of green towns, and there's some rules and regulations around that you can't actually operate a Minpaku within these sort of areas, especially down near the the Lake Norgetico. There's a few areas down there, so something else to look into as well. So try and get that squared away, even probably before you buy the property. The next license is the ryokan license. That's where we operate most of our lodges, is under a ryokan license. A little bit more rules and regulations when it comes to the health department and the fire department, and yearly inspections for both the health department and also the fire department. But you can operate 365 days of the year. You've got to keep a ledger with all the guests that come and go through the property. Also, same with the Minpaku license, where all your guests are from as well. Fairly straightforward on the Minpaku side. A little bit more involved on the ryokan side. You have to keep passport details, where the guests are from, how long they stay, and all these sort of details as well as a bit of ledger over time that you have to hold on file if the authorities ask for. So that's another thing. And you have to have, like I mentioned before, fire department comes in once a year to check all your fire systems. You have to have 2 fire drills a year. Got to go to the health department once a year. You've got to do other sort of food safety training and these sort of things. It's all fairly achievable. Once again, I'd highly recommend getting someone to help you out with the process of getting that original ryokan license. And the hotel license. This is for more big operations. We're talking 20, 30, 40 room hotels. I'm not experienced in this at all, but I know I've had a few friends that have gone through this and they said it was pretty hellish. So definitely you'd want to get someone to help you out with this, especially when it comes to the fire restrictions and all the different fire departments. You have to fit out some pretty advanced sort of fire alarm systems and things, which can cost you anywhere from 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 grand for these all Bluetooth sort of fire alarm systems as well. So if you're going for a larger property, definitely look into that sort of things and allow a pretty good buffer there to fit out for all these different sort of fire compliance that you need to meet. So step 3, ideally you have a working holiday visa. If you're under 30, that's fairly straightforward to get. Most people are eligible for that depending on where you're from. It's pretty cheap and it's good for like 6 months to a year depending. But if you want, there's a great sort of way to get you out there. You can legally open bank accounts and buy a car and buy a house. You don't have to have a visa to buy a property. You can buy that on a tourist visa, but it's everything else around it that's quite tricky with setting up bank accounts and buying a vehicle and all these other things that sort of required for having a property are quite tricky, which they don't really tell you about that. Easy to buy the house, everything else around it, quite tricky. So yeah, definitely will help you a long way if you have a visa when you're trying to buy a property. If you're over 30, you're going to have to go down the road of maybe self-proprietor or a business manager visa, which is what we went down the road of a business manager's visa. There's a few little things around this as well that can be a little bit tricky, especially if you don't have a property in hand or you're in the process. It's kind of a bit of it all sort of help. You need one without the other sort of scenario. The chicken and egg sort of scenario. With setting up the Japanese company, you're going to need 5 million yen capital, which can include the purchase price of that property or any renovations. So let's say the property's 10 million, there you go. You've got your 5 million yen capital, the requirement to establish the company. And then it can also act as your physical office for your company as well. Or even a self-proprietor, you can use the same sort of thing. You need the 5 million yen capital investment to establish as a sole proprietor or even a company. Now there's 2 different sort of companies. You've got your GK and your KK. GK is what we have, which is a basic sort of a company. The KK is more something that can be divided up to more different sort of shareholders. And if you wanted to list it on the stock market in the future, then yes, you can set up a KK. Ourselves, we're just at the GK level. In the future, we may go to KK. At this stage, we're keeping it to GK, and that's the way we've done it. Look, if you're just wanting to buy one property or couple, probably go down the sole proprietor, but then you've got to think about the tax implications back home in your home country as well. So we went down the company route ourselves. A lot of people around town have sort of gone either way on it, but it's up to you. Like I said, do a bit of more research around that. In conjunction with having the visas, having a good accountant and a good lawyer, immigration lawyer, is going to help you immensely trying to navigate this whole visa process. Like I said, working holiday visa, which would be a good place to start. If you have that working holiday visa, get everything get the ball rolling, but in the future start thinking about how I'm going to move forward with this visa. And that's where I recommend going down the road of the business manager's visa. The first one can take you anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half. Somewhere in that range. They want everything, all your bank accounts back home and everything else. If it's just yourself, it might be a little bit easier, but if you've got a partner and kids and all these sort of different things, that can just add another layer of complexity to it all. Let's say myself, I have a business manager under my name, and then my wife, she's a dependent off that, and then also our son as well. So we all have visas essentially off that business manager visa. There is requirements where you have to pay yourself a salary and all that. First year or two you won't have to, but then you will have to pay yourself a salary. you can have that around 3 or 4 million yen a year, so 30, 40 grand a year, in order to keep that visa as well. We've had friends that have had their visas revoked because they were not paying themselves a salary. So that's quite important, and depends who helps you set up this company. A lot of this might not be explained, so definitely get some good guidance around this. What do I have to do to legally keep this visa every year? It starts off with just a 1-year visa. We're still on a 1-year visa ourselves. Ideally, we get to something that's a 3 or a 5 year. This stage, we've just been on a 1-year visa, as well a lot of our friends are in the same boat as well. Some of our friends have got to a 3-year and eventually maybe even a 5-year. But at this stage, we have to keep renewing our visa every year. But having a good immigration lawyer will help you immensely through all this. So I have had a couple of friends that have gone down this and set it up all themselves, but it's fair play to them. There's a lot of work that's involved with all that, but I think it's money well spent, especially on these sort of people. Like a good accountant, a good immigration lawyer is going to save you a lot of heartache and a lot of strife. Where do I go? Who do I talk to? All this sort of different things, different departments to try and get these visas sorted. And the chances of getting qualified and being eligible for that visa are a lot easier if you have someone helping you out, because they know the rules, they know the legislation, and the rules are always changing and things as well. So definitely, I recommend getting someone to help you in this regard. Might cost you $2,000 or $3,000 to help you set, help you get that initial visa. It's a lot easier once you've already got it and then you're just renewing it every year. It's a bit more of a process, but it's nowhere near as bad as that initial time when you have to apply for it for the first time. And then obviously having a bilingual accountant is crucial, I feel, as well. Don't have to be based wherever you're near Miyoko or wherever you may be looking at buying a property. It could be Tokyo based. Our accountant's based in Tokyo. She's amazing. She speaks both English and Japanese. She helps us out a lot, just with everything. There's different softwares. There's a software called Free, which is simply pretty much the Japanese equivalent of Xero. If you've used a business back home in Australia and New Zealand, I'm sure you're probably pretty familiar with Xero. So Free's similar to that, maybe not quite as good, but the same thing. It links into your bank accounts and reconciles all your stuff at the end of the month or end of the financial year. It is fairly easy. Bit of Google Translate on there, you can sort of navigate it fairly well. Which is, I highly recommend using Free. We weren't initially using Free. It's not actually free, it does cost, but that's just what they call it. Also with your HR and payroll and sort of things, they have these different departments within there as well, so it makes your sort of accounting side of the business a lot easier with this. Otherwise you're just down with paper and ledgers and old school way. So highly recommend getting onto something like that as well. Banking and insurance is quite tricky as well in Japan. When you're first starting out, I recommend maybe opening a JP Post bank account, which is a good one to have. You'll find once you start talking to a lot of people, everyone's got about 3 or 4 different bank accounts and none of them are great. The banking in Japan is not great just overall, but yeah, start with a JP Post. Fairly straightforward to open, especially if you have a visa. If you don't have a visa, it's almost impossible. If you have a visa of some sort, whether it's a working holiday visa or a business manager's visa, you should be able to navigate that process fairly well. Whether you open a personal one or a corporate one, corporate bank accounts are quite tricky to open. When you establish your company, try and get a corporate bank account open at that time. We retrospectively opened a corporate bank account, which was actually quite tricky. We should have opened one when we got the company established, but for whatever reason, we didn't get one open then. And then we tried to open one a year or two later, and it was quite a headache. It was like, well, why didn't you open one then? Because we never did, we never recommended it or whatever. So yeah, definitely trying to get that corporate bank account opened when you establish the company as well. So you started from day dot. You've got a corporate bank account, you've got that company established, you're good to go there. Especially if you do try and get finance down the line or whatever, comes audited or whatever it may be, it's very clear cut. It's not a personal bank account or anything like that. So the banking is quite tricky. Like I said earlier, try and get some good help around this as well. Just trying to open a bank account can feel like quite a big job, bigger than it needs to be. Insurance is another tricky one as well. You're going to have to find a good insurance broker. There are some sort of online ones, but generally, I don't know, I try and get some recommendations of people around town on good insurance brokers. Insurance is generally quite good in Japan. They do pay out quite often. The premiums are quite reasonable. Depends if you get an earthquake or the full cover and that sort of thing. Me personally, we don't have earthquake cover. It's almost double the cost, and they only pay out half what they've insured value. So if the property is insured for $1 million, they're only going to pay out $500,000, let's say. But then the premium is double. So I don't know. Carry the one on that, whether you think it's worth paying the earthquake cover or not. Myself and a lot of our friends, we just go for the basic cover, both basic sort of fire and flood, or whatever it may be. Not the full earthquake package. Like I said, it's about double the cost. A vehicle can be quite tricky as well. You can buy them in a company name, fairly straightforward, but if you're trying to buy one without a visa, it's very hard, pretty much impossible as well. Buying one in your own name is quite easy if you have that working holiday visa or a visa, but if you don't have that, you can buy them in your company name as well, which is how we buy most of our vehicles via our company. There is a few processes. The Keiler cars, the smaller cars, are easier to buy not as quite as much of a process. With the bigger vehicles like the big 8-seaters or big sort of family wagons, which is great in snow country, you want something with 4-wheel drive and snow tyres and all that. There's a bit of a process going to the police station and registering it and showing where you're going to park and all these sort of different things, which seems quite bizarre, but that's just what you have to do. Vehicle insurance is quite expensive. You may pay $1,200 to $1,500 a year just for basic third party. It's almost about the same as it is to insure your house as your vehicle. I'm not too sure how that works, but that's just the way it is. So that's another thing you've got to factor in there as well. Anyway guys, that wraps it up for today. If you've got any questions or anything or something you need a bit more detail on, definitely drop it in the comments below. Something you want me to dig a little bit deeper in. Like I said, that's a pretty high level overview of everything we went over today, but hopefully this will help you if you're trying to set up a business in Japan for managing a property in a ski town.